In terms of reward, I think when you guys were here last week, we were using the ball, right? You can use that, okay? When we talk in terms of reward, we don't want to do it every time the dog does something right. We want to do it frequently enough, okay, so that the dog stays motivated, stays incentivized to continue to work with us. But we don't want to do it all the time, right? And the other thing is basically the more you depend on food treats, the more you run into problems with the dog not performing because food has to be present, so on and so forth. So we only reward voluntary behavior, which means that we're not using pressure, we're not using additional commands, we don't use physical molding, none of these things. We tell the dog to do a thing, the dog does it voluntarily. We only reinforce intermittently, okay? And the reason why is because dogs have a tendency to work harder for less. So with the anticipation that food is going to be forthcoming eventually, we can get her to do longer strings of behavior without having to supply food for every little link in that chain, right? Out, good girl. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the stationary commands. We have said, we had introduced down, and we were working on stand. All three of these commands are important. Sit is focus, right? We don't say look at me or any of that nonsense. The expectation is when I call you here, out. When I call you here, nope. Nope. Yes. You look me in the face, right? So basically that little game right there, you know, hot, cold, red light, green light, whatever. I have food in one hand, okay? Out. Good. This is actually how we introduce the leave it command. She's all fixated on the hand, right? In order to get access to the reward, she has to do one thing. That's not it. So again, I use the leash restraint. Go ahead and scratch there, silly. That's not it either. That's volunteering it down, which is what we were going to do, but then she started fighting my hands, so we had to move on to something else. The one thing about dog training is you have to be fluid. So she's basically resisting, right? She wants the food, she wants the food. And this is the trap that we don't want to get into. She has to perform a very specific task, and that's look me in the face. So we have all these options. Snap at the leash hand, grab it, fall off the table, right? Good girl, here. And basically we just recycle through, because in dogs, and this is important, I want you to hear this many times, count. You finish what you start. You don't get frustrated and say, I quit, we'll go back to this later. You finish what you start. Sit. Good. Yes! We get eye contact. Everything ends in eye contact. We only pay off for eye contact. Okay? And the reason why is because if you keep drilling your dog with food, she's going to focus on the hand, she's going to focus on the pocket, she's going to focus on whatever makes those things happen. Right? We only pay off when we have hard eye contact. And the reason why, sit last. Good. Very nice. Yes, very good. Is because in order to keep her attention, we have to get her attention. Does that make sense? I don't really want to have to work that hard. My dog needs to work for me. I'm not working for my dog. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, moving on. When we talk in terms of stationary exercises, each one has a purpose. Sit, obviously. It's pretty, you know, self-explanatory. Nope. Down. Good. Stay. Because when I tell my dog to kennel, this is the behavior I want her to engage in. Out. Good. Okay, good girl. Now, because she's a baby, right, her downstay is going to be about that long. This is something you have to build over time. And essentially, it should be, when we go to pay off, what we're waiting for is not necessarily the big O and the big K, right? I don't want to say it because this is what's going to happen. Nope. Good. You notice I didn't repeat myself, right? I'm not going to tell her that word because I don't want her to pop off and be all excited. I'm going to return to her, release her, reward her, good girl. And notice, no food, because what happened? I had to fight for this behavior, right? Good girl. And then I'm going to release. Okay. And the reason why is because if I tell my dog kennel, I want the dog to assume a down. I want the dog to assume a stay. We have to sequence those things. Kennel down, stay. Kennel down, stay. Kennel down, stay for 10 seconds. Kennel down, stay for 10 seconds while I move about a foot or two away from you. Kennel down, stay while I move, over the course of a week up to 6 feet away from you, so on and so forth. You always teach the dog that stay is implied until you release the dog. So it's not the action of no motion, stay. It's the action of waiting for the release command. Does that make sense? Out. Good. So when it comes to the down, what we're doing is we're helping the dog assume a restive state. So this is the command that you use when you're eating dinner. Count. Count. Good. This is the command you use when you're eating dinner or when you're teaching your dog to relax in the presence of big distractions, the kids running, so on and so forth. What are you doing, Pumpkin? She doesn't have bugs. She just had a bath. No bugs. Hey, here last. Good. Sit. The other command we use is stand. Very simple. Here's the treat. I reach my hand under her body. Stand. Good. And I stroke her from underneath to make sure she doesn't sit. Good girl. I release the treat when she's standing, and then I release her. Okay. Think about why would we want her to stand. What are some of the conditions you would want your dog to stand in?
When you're trying to get her to leave the house or something?
No, when you're grooming her. When you're wiping her feet. Do you want to bend down and be knees on the ground and rubbing all over your dog? I don't. We have 9 dogs in our house right now. That ain't happening. Stand, stay. Let me administer this to you. Clean your ears. I want it to be comfortable for the owner, right? When you take your dog to the vet, is the vet going to let your dog lay down? No, he has to stand. Is your groomer going to let your dog lay down? No, it has to stand. So what we want to do is teach her, here last, that when we hear that word, count, count, good. She doesn't have to be in a sit or a down in order to stand. But what we want to do is teach her that when I say that word, it means you kick your hind legs out from under you and you stand up. Stand. Nope, that's lay down, silly. There we go. Good girl. Because when she's doing this, I can wipe her feet. I can check her ears. Good girl. And my vet can go over her without having too much of a struggle. Okay? Good puppy. Yay, what a